A routine patrol by a local police officer took a chilling turn as he discovered an infant all by itself at the side of a busy road. Officer Sampson was forced to block traffic to keep the baby safe, but that was only the beginning. If only he had known that this baby was only a small piece of a bigger puzzle. However, the biggest surprise of all came when the DNA test revealed the identity of the infant's mother. Officer Sampson had never had a case like this one before. Living in a fairly small town, his usual cases were burglaries and things like harassment or house calls, nothing as intense as finding an infant child at the side of a busy road. So his shock was understandable when he spotted the bright red stroller moving slowly up the road through a gust of wind. He instantly stopped, to the annoyance of other drivers, who began to honk loudly. But Officer Sampson had only one thing on his mind: moving the baby out of the road. When he walked up to the stroller, cars rushing past, he heard the baby crying at the top of its lungs. It clearly had been alone for a long time. The sun felt hot on Officer Sampson's back as he stood over the baby, and he could only imagine the agony it felt being in the heat for so long all by itself. The baby didn't look older than a year, and judging by its clothes, it was a girl. Officer Sampson picked up the baby and moved the stroller out of the way before going back to his car and turning on the air conditioning. The baby was still crying loudly as she sat on his lap, and Officer Sampson was almost unintelligible as he tried to call for backup. "I need backup on Route 45, he shouted through the radio. He didn't know what he should do with the baby, as he had no kids of his own. He knew he couldn't drive without a baby car seat, but staying inside his car also didn't seem like the best option. "Oh, and bring a baby car seat and baby formula," he added just in time, as the backup was already on its way. When they arrived, they blocked the rest of the road to ensure even more safety for all the officers walking around, and Officer Sampson handed the baby to one of his female officers. "Let's take her in the stroller back to the station and find her parents." Officer Sampson and his team took the stroller to the station as evidence, and the female officer headed to the emergency room with the baby girl to give her a health checkup. They had no idea how long she had been alone in that stroller, and she desperately needed hydration. Officer Sampson couldn't wrap his head around how a baby could end up there all alone, but he was about to find out. Officer Bellman, the female officer who had taken the girl to the emergency room, was approached by a doctor while waiting for test results. The baby girl lay in bed, hooked to various machines and IVs. She was dehydrated and malnourished, but other than that, she was fine, without any exterior wounds. However, seeing the look on the doctor's face, he had discovered something serious. "I have the baby girl's DNA results back," he said, as he handed over a file. Officer Bellman took the file and thanked the doctor, but as she turned around, he grabbed her by the shoulder. "The girl has to stay, but she needs round-the-clock police protection," the doctor said, with such a serious tone it caught Officer Bellman off guard. "What do you mean?" Officer Bellman asked. Usually the police made such decisions, but something told her to listen to what the doctor had to say. "It's all in the file," the doctor said, and he walked away. Officer Bellman didn't think twice and quickly called the chief of police to explain the situation. He told her to bring the file over immediately and that 2 officers were on their way to the girl. When Officer Bellman arrived at the station, the chief of police and Officer Sampson were already waiting for her in the chief's office. "Close the door behind you," Chief Wallace said sternly, as Officer Bellman walked through the door. As she closed the door, Officer Sampson closed all the blinds. Her heart began to race as she realized the severity of the case. The chief's hand gestured toward the file, his expression unreadable. Officer Bellman's fingers trembled slightly as she opened the thick folder. The room was heavy with anticipation, every officer's eyes fixed on the papers as she turned them over, searching for the DNA results that could potentially unravel the mystery of the baby's identity. As the pages fluttered under her quick fingers, Officer Bellman froze. The DNA results connected the infant directly to Senator Richards, a figure known nationwide for his stance on family values. Her voice faltered as she read aloud, "The DNA, it's a match. To Senator Richards." The room fell into a stunned silence. Each officer exchanged looks, their faces reflecting a mix of disbelief and concern. This revelation was unexpected, the weight of the information sinking in slowly as they all processed the implications. No one spoke, the only sound the rustling of the file's pages as Officer Bellman closed it. Chief Wallace finally broke the silence, his voice grave. This case just became a lot more complicated. His eyes swept across the room, meeting each officer's gaze steadily. "We're dealing with potential fallout on a national level. We need to tread carefully and consider our next steps wisely." The officers nodded, a new resolve settling over the room. They were no longer just dealing with an abandoned infant. This was now a matter entangled with high-profile politics and media scrutiny. "We need to keep this under wraps," Officer Bellman whispered. "At least until we understand why this baby was left alone." As word of the abandoned baby linked to Senator Richards leaked, reporters swarmed the police station. Cameras and microphones were everywhere as journalists jostled for the best spots. The once quiet building was now buzzing with frenetic energy, each reporter eager to catch the officers for any snippet of information. "Can you confirm the baby's identity?" one reporter shouted, thrusting a microphone forward. "What's the senator's connection?" Another chimed in as cameras flashed incessantly. The officers, caught off guard by the barrage of questions, tried to navigate through the crowd, their faces tense with the need to maintain control of the situation. Chief Wallace, seeing the chaos unfold, stepped forward decisively. "We will be holding a press conference shortly," he announced over the clamor. "All questions will be addressed at that time." His voice, firm and authoritative, seemed to momentarily calm the storm as reporters began to back off, waiting for the official briefing. Officer Sampson, hailed as a hero for saving the baby, felt overwhelmed by the sudden attention. As he walked through the station, every camera turned his way, catching every gesture, every expression. "It's just part of the job," he muttered to himself, trying to shrug off the heavy weight of sudden fame. The station's atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Every officer, from rookies to veterans, was on high alert, dealing with the media spotlight while trying to keep their focus on the investigation. "We need to stay focused," Chief Wallace reminded his team, his voice cutting through the noise. "Let's not lose sight of what's important here." "We just got an anonymous tip," Officer Jenkins announced, walking into the room with a note in hand. Someone reported seeing a suspicious figure near where the baby was found, right around the time she was discovered. The officers leaned in, the note passing from hand to hand, each reading the scribbled description of a shadowy figure lurking near the scene. The team huddled around the security monitors, fast-forwarding through hours of footage from the area. "There! Stop!" Officer Bellman pointed at the screen where a hooded person was visible, moving uncertainly near the road. "Looks like our mysterious tipster was right," muttered Officer Sampson, his eyes narrowing as he watched the figure disappear from the frame. "We need to find out who this is. Fast," Officer Sampson said, his voice tense. "That could be our key to understanding why the baby was left there." Officer Bellman nodded, already dialing the number for their contacts in forensics. "I'm on it." Let's see if we can enhance the image and maybe get a face, she replied, determination lining her voice. Together, Officers Sampson and Bellman coordinated efforts with the forensic team. Enhance the face and run it through the database, Bellman instructed, pointing at the screen. And check for any vehicles in the area that might have been involved, Sampson added. The team worked with renewed vigor, knowing that each clue they uncovered could lead to a breakthrough. As the day wore on, the pressure within the precinct mounted. Each officer felt the weight of urgency. This was no ordinary case. "We're on the brink of something big here," Chief Wallace murmured as he walked past, glancing at the flurry of activity around him. The sense of impending breakthrough was palpable, driving them forward. Officer Bellman stared at the computer screen, her brow furrowed. "Looks like the baby's DNA matches a woman reported missing last year," she announced, turning to her colleagues. The room buzzed as the officers gathered around, peering at the image of Mia Thompson displayed on the screen, a renowned actress whose disappearance had once made headlines. "Mia Thompson," Chief Wallace read out loud, the name resonating with a sense of familiarity among the officers. She was a famous actress, right? Vanished without a trace from her home in LA. The details of Mia's mysterious disappearance echoed through the precinct, adding layers of intrigue to the baby's identity. The link between the abandoned baby and Mia Thompson sent a ripple of shock through the department. "Can you believe this?" Officer Jenkins whispered, his eyes wide. "From a roadside abandonment to a high-profile missing person," mused another. The case's complexity deepened, pulling them into uncharted waters. Officers exchanged looks of disbelief as they processed the information. How could a missing actress be connected to this baby? Officer Sampson questioned, shaking his head. "And why here? Why now?" Officer Bellman added, her voice tinged with frustration and curiosity. The questions hung in the air, unanswered. "This case just escalated," Chief Wallace declared, his voice firm. "We're not just dealing with a simple case of abandonment anymore. It's much bigger." The realization that they were now entangled in a high-stakes investigation settled over the team, sharpening their focus and doubling their resolve to uncover the truth. Chief Wallace stood in front of the assembled team, his expression serious. "We need a full investigation into Mia Thompson's life and career. Everything," he commanded. Officers scrambled, pulling up records, interviews, and articles, diving deep into the actress's past to gather every possible clue that could shed light on her mysterious disappearance and the baby's abandonment. "Look at this," Officer Bellman called out, pointing at a restraining order filed by Mia against a man described as dangerously obsessed. The team gathered around, examining the details of the stalker, who had repeatedly threatened and attempted to contact Mia over the years. His obsession painted a troubling picture that couldn't be ignored. The stalker's history of obsession and threats quickly elevated him to the status of primary suspect in Mia's disappearance. "This guy had motive and means," Officer Sampson noted, reviewing the timeline of the stalker's actions. "He's been quiet since she disappeared. Too quiet." The suspicion was palpable, and the hunt to locate him intensified. As officers dug through old files and reports, Mia's troubled past came into clearer view. "She was more than just an actress. She was a target," Officer Jenkins muttered, flipping through pages of documented incidents and police interventions. The connections between her public life and private fears started forming a coherent narrative, crucial for understanding her fate. The urgency of the situation escalated as the team pieced together the potential dangers Mia had faced. "If he's as unstable as these reports suggest," Chief Wallace pondered aloud, "we need to assume he's capable of anything." This realization drove the team to prepare for all scenarios, knowing that resolving this case might put them in direct danger. In the dimly lit briefing room, Officer Bellman revealed he was released from prison just 3 months ago. The team absorbed the news with grim faces, understanding the timing lined up dangerously close to the baby's discovery. "It's no coincidence," Chief Wallace concluded, his voice thick with concern as he pondered the implications of the stalker's recent freedom. Maps and GPS data scattered across the table. Officer Sampson pointed to a remote location marked on the screen. "This is where he's been," he said, zooming into a satellite image of a secluded cabin in the woods. "Isolated. Perfect for hiding." Officer Bellman nodded, her mind racing with tactical plans to approach the site without alarming the suspect. The team gathered their gear, checking each item with precision. "He might be armed," Officer Jenkins warned, handing out bulletproof vests. "Expect the worst." They reviewed the approach strategies one last time, everyone's expression set with determination to handle the situation safely but effectively, prepared for any threats that might await. As the team neared the cabin, the lead car signaled a slow down. "Keep it tight and quiet," Officer Sampson radioed to the others. They moved with practiced caution, each officer aware of their role in the plan. Backup was on standby, ready to intervene at a moment's notice, ensuring the operation's success with meticulous coordination. The crunch of gravel underfoot was nearly deafening in the tense silence as they approached the cabin. Every officer's senses were heightened, eyes scanning for any movement. "Ready on my go," Officer Sampson whispered into his mic, his hand resting on his weapon, ready to draw. They were steps away from facing whatever or whoever was inside. With guns drawn, the team breached the cabin, quickly subduing the stalker. Handcuffed, he was led out, his eyes darting nervously. Back at the station, he was seated in an interrogation room, the stark light casting harsh shadows over his face. "Let's start talking," Officer Sampson said firmly, as the suspect looked up, the reality of his capture setting in. Under the relentless glare of the interrogation light, the stalker's voice broke. "Mia faked her death," he confessed, his words sending a chill through the room. "She did it to escape. From me." Officers exchanged quick glances, processing the bombshell that Mia Thompson might still be alive, living somewhere under a new identity. "And the baby? What do you know about her?" Officer Bellman pressed, her tone insistent. The stalker shook his head, his expression unreadable. "I know nothing about any baby," he claimed, his voice steady yet somehow unconvincing. His demeanor left the officers in doubt, wondering if he was withholding more than he shared. The interrogation intensified as the officers pressed for more details. "You expect us to believe you had no idea?" Officer Sampson challenged, leaning forward. The suspect's responses were erratic, his frustration mounting with each question. "I'm telling you everything I know," he exclaimed, his hands clenching into fists, the room tense with the effort to uncover the full truth. As the interrogation wound down, a mix of relief and frustration washed over the officers. They had answers, yet so many questions remained. "We're not done here," Chief Wallace stated firmly, looking over the notes they had taken. "There's more to this story, and we're going to find it." Determination set in as they prepared for the next phase of the investigation. In a small, quaint town, investigators found that Mia Thompson had been living under the alias Mary Stone. Neighbors described Mary as quiet and reserved, a stark contrast to Mia's public persona. She kept to herself, but she seemed nice, one neighbor shared. The revelation that Mia had crafted such an intricate alias to hide herself deepened the mystery surrounding her reasons for disappearing. Officers combed through Mia's last known movements in the small town. They found receipts, local sightings, and even library records that painted a picture of a life meticulously planned to avoid detection. "Look at this," Officer Bellman pointed out, showing a receipt for multiple prepaid cell phones. "She was careful, very careful," she noted, piecing together the careful orchestration of Mia's hidden life. The more they uncovered, the clearer Mia's desperate efforts to remain undetected became. "She moved here every few months," Officer Jenkins said, spreading out a map marked with various addresses. "Always one step ahead," he murmured, tracing the lines connecting the dots that showcased Mia's struggle to maintain her anonymity against an ever-present threat. The complexity of Mia's situation weighed heavily on the team as they delved deeper into her life. "Every layer we peel back just adds more questions," Chief Wallace observed, his face reflecting the fatigue and frustration of untangling such a complex case. The team felt the emotional and mental toll as they uncovered layers of deceit that had kept Mia hidden from the world and from danger. With each new discovery, the team gradually pieced together Mia's plight. She was fighting her own battle, in her own way, Officer Sampson reflected aloud as they reviewed the collected evidence. The depth of her fear and the lengths she went to protect herself became clearer, drawing the officers closer to understanding the harsh realities of her hidden life. Sorting through a box of personal items, Officer Bellman found letters between Mia and a confidant. "Listen to this," she said, reading aloud. "I worry every day about her safety." The mention of a her hinted at the baby's existence well before her discovery by the roadside. The officers exchanged looks, realizing the significance of this new evidence. The letters detailed how the confidant had helped Mia navigate her secret life. "She says here, 'Without you, I couldn't have managed this,'" Officer Jenkins noted, highlighting the text. This person was not just a friend, but a pivotal figure in Mia's attempt to remain hidden, providing emotional and logistical support that was crucial to her survival. Using the information from the letters, the team located the confidant, a woman named Lisa, living 2 towns over. "She might be our best shot at finding Mia," Chief Wallace stated, organizing a plan to approach her. "If anyone knows where Mia is, it's her," he added, highlighting the importance of this lead. The officers met discreetly to coordinate the questioning of Lisa, ensuring her safety from any potential threats. "We'll keep this low profile," Officer Sampson assured as they prepared. "Safety for her, safety for us." They planned to secure the area around Lisa's home, making sure the stalker was nowhere near. Under the safety of police protection, Lisa finally spoke. Mia was terrified he'd find her again, she disclosed, her voice strained with emotion. She left the baby at a safe place, hoping to protect her. The officers listened intently, noting every detail. This was the key piece of the puzzle they had been missing. The confirmation hit like a wave. "Mia Thompson is her mother," Lisa continued, the room falling silent at the news. The officers exchanged stunned looks, the reality of Mia's connection to the abandoned baby settling in. It reshaped the entire scope of their investigation and their understanding of Mia's plight. Lisa's words painted a vivid picture. When Mia found out he was close again, she made the hardest choice, she said, tears welling up. She left the baby to protect her. The officers absorbed the gravity of Mia's decision, understanding it was a desperate act to save her child from the danger that had haunted her own life. The truth about Mia Thompson, a famous actress who had faked her death to escape a dangerous stalker, shook the team to their core. She did all this to protect her child, Chief Wallace reflected, the weight of Mia's sacrifice evident in his somber tone. The reality of her life, fraught with fear and drastic decisions, was now starkly clear to them all. The officers gathered, processing the full scope of Mia's actions. She was fighting not just for herself, but for her daughter, Officer Bellman concluded, her voice a mix of admiration and sorrow. The team nodded, a new resolve forming as they prepared to take the next steps to bring Mia out of hiding and safely reunite her with her child. With the stalker safely behind bars, the team focused on their next goal, reuniting Mia with her daughter. Plans were swiftly put into place, coordinating with child services to ensure a smooth transition. "We'll do everything we can to make this right," Chief Wallace assured, his team nodding in agreement, motivated by the prospect of bringing some joy back into Mia's tumultuous life. Mia, her face a mix of relief and apprehension, stepped out from the shadows of her hiding to reclaim her daughter. She was escorted by Officer Bellman, who offered a reassuring smile. "You're safe now, Mia. It's time to go home," Bellman said softly, as they walked towards the quiet room where her daughter waited. Officer Sampson watched from the doorway as Mia embraced her daughter for the first time in months. The little girl's laughter, mixed with Mia's tears, filled the room, touching everyone present. It was a poignant reminder of what they had been fighting for. "This is why we do this job," Sampson whispered to his partner, both unable to look away from the tender scene. As the case wrapped up, the officers felt a complex mix of triumph and sadness. They had succeeded in their mission, yet the emotional toll of the case lingered. "It's over, but it feels like we've all been through so much," Officer Jenkins remarked quietly to his colleagues. They shared a moment of silent reflection, acknowledging the bittersweet end of a grueling journey. The journey had been harrowing, filled with twists and turns that tested their resolve. Now, as Mia and her daughter started a new chapter, the officers could finally step back. "We've done what we set out to do," Chief Wallace declared, his voice filled with a weary pride. The mystery had reached its end, bringing closure that was both triumphant and heartrending.